Yeah, I hope that you hearing me. This is the future, all about cybersecurity. Talking about the hackers, I'm just trying to warn you. From the one and only legend, the cyber informer. Hey, yeah, this is the cyber reformer. This is the cyber reformer. Let's go.
It's time for the Cybersecurity Business Connect and Protect Central Coast how-to video. I am Michael Trimblett, the Cyber Informer, at cyber_informer on Twitter. Today we will look at hardening your email. In this video, we'll be looking at techniques to remove spam from your inbox, but also methods to prevent your emails being tampered with or your email address being used by scammers without your permission. This can get a little complex, so get your propeller hats ready. Let's go. How do I stop scammers using my email address? Have you had someone send you a nasty email telling you to stop sending them spam? For unprotected domains, this can happen if the hackers are able to commandeer your email address. If you don't have the basic protections in place, then it's elementary to do this. Did you know anyone can send email from whatever email address they choose? All you have to do in your email client, like Outlook, is simply change the sending email address to whatever email address you want. Back in the 90s, I would send email to my friends using their email address as the email it was sent from. In other words, the email they had received from me looked like they had sent it to themselves. It was harmless fun. However, hackers have found a way to weaponize this, and the industry is having to retroactively fix this security hole. The reason it doesn't work well these days is because there are protections that can be implemented. However, in many cases, these protections are not on by default. Before we get into the protections, let's have a look at what spoofing is and why scammers would want to spoof your email address. Some of the concepts here can be difficult to grasp and may not be suitable for those with basic knowledge of how email works. In those cases, it's important you know the concepts so you can have a discussion with someone who knows how to implement them, which is what this video discusses. With that said, this video is rated 3 propeller hats out of 5. What is spoofing? Email spoofing is a technique used in spam and phishing attacks to trick users into thinking a message came from a person or entity they either know or can trust. In spoofing attacks, the sender forges an email sender so that the receiver sees the fraudulent sender address, which most users take at face value. Unless they inspect the header more closely, users see the forged sender in a message. If it's a name they recognize, they're more likely to trust it. So, they'll click on malicious links, open malware attachments, send sensitive data, and even transfer corporate funds. This is why spoofing is a popular attack. Financial gain is generally the reason. How does email work? The sender will address an email to the receiver and press send. This will go to the sender's email server, which will look up the receiver's email server and send the email to that server. The receiver's email server will collect that email and send it to your mailbox. When you log in, you will receive the email. What is spoofing? Email spoofing is possible due to the way email systems are designed. Outgoing messages are assigned a sender address by the application sending the email, such as Outlook. Outgoing email servers have no way to tell whether the sender address is legitimate or spoofed. In fact, hackers' email servers are designed to send spoofed emails, so the burden is on the receiving server to validate the sender is legitimate. If we follow the flow of the email in this diagram, the hacker forges the sender's email address, which is sent to the hacker's email server. This is relayed to the victim's email server, which will simply accept it. It is then sent to the victim's email inbox. The victim could be you, your boss, or a client of yours, for example. In this case, the spoofed email address is ceo@yourdomain.com.au. This is the email address the hacker is hoping you will trust. If you trust the email address, the hacker is hoping you'll open the email, which may then deploy malware on your computer. It's important to understand what is not spoofing. Sending an email from a Gmail account, but with someone's name, is not email spoofing. This is impersonation. This is a common approach which is almost impossible to block. Why is it impossible to block? Because anyone can register a Gmail address with anyone's name. Email filters filter on email addresses, not on name. For example, Loyal IT's managing director is Michael Goodwin. You can find this information freely available on our website. If a hacker wanted to send to me, Michael Trimblett, an email and make it appear from Michael Goodwin, you could simply get a free Gmail address, which might be mgoodwin1234@gmail.com, and use the name Michael Goodwin as the sender's name. When this email is sent from this address, the receiver will see the name, but not necessarily the email address. Say if a hacker sent an email impersonating Michael Goodwin, asking for money to be transferred to an account. Non-savvy users within the business may be tricked into thinking this was legitimate. This is what's commonly called as a spear phishing attack. If the email is added to a block list, the hackers could open a new Gmail account called mgoodwin12345@gmail.com and send another email. Detecting this sort of attack is easy if you look at the sender's email address, but impossible to block because new legitimate email addresses can be created once the original is blocked. This is what hackers are resorting to now that there are technologies which can help combat spoofing of email addresses. There are technologies that can be implemented to combat spoofing email and spam. Spam filters, Sender Policy Framework or SPF, DomainKeys Identified Mail or DKIM, Domain-Based Message Authentication Reporting and Conformance, DMARC. Don't let the name spook you. Most are quite simple to set up, but will likely need your experienced IT support team or web developers to implement for you. In this video, we will talk about the technologies, but I will not show you how to implement them because if you get it wrong, it could break your email flow. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the technologies so you can have a discussion with your IT support team to implement them. The spam filter. Spam filters sit between the sender's email server and your email server in the cloud. It looks at all email going in and out, looking at the content, sender's address, and other metrics to determine if the email is legitimate. If it is deemed to be legitimate, it'll be sent through to your inbox. If it is not legitimate, it will quarantine it. This is not perfect because it relies heavily on artificial intelligence, so it can lead to false positives and false negatives. In other words, it may let spam through to your inbox and it may quarantine legitimate email. So you still need to be wary. However, the most egregious spam will be found and quarantined, so this is a great way to prevent you receiving spam. But what about your email address being spoofed? How can we prevent a hacker spoofing your email address? The first step is to use a Sender Policy Framework or SPF record in your DNS. DNS is what all computers look at when finding your website, email server, and other online services. Without getting too technical, it's the glue that holds the internet together. Every domain will have DNS. Without it, email won't flow and your website will be inaccessible. As DNS is ubiquitous, it can be set up so receiving email servers can check if the email came from your authorized email server. In your DNS, you would specify the servers which are authorized to send email on your behalf. If the email has been sent from a server other than that in the include statement, in this case, spf.protection.outlook.com, the statement at the end will tell the receiving email server what to do with it. In this case, the -all indicates that if any email is received from any other server other than the Outlook.com servers, in other words, Microsoft 365's email servers, then all email should be discarded. There are other options here, which are +all and -all. +all will allow email through even though it has been spoofed, and -all will let email through but attach a warning to say it could have been spoofed. The most secure option is what is shown, which is -all. Following this diagram, if a hacker spoofs your email address, we know the hacker's server will let it through. But when your server receives a spoofed email, which fails the SPF check, it will be rejected immediately and will not land in your inbox. In some cases, it may land in your junk folder depending on how your email server is set up. But this all relies on the receiving email server checking the SPF record. There are servers out there which do not do this. Therefore, hackers can still spoof even if you have an SPF record set up. The major email providers like Microsoft and Google do check SPF records, but your self-hosted Exchange servers or backyard email providers may not. So this system is not foolproof, but it helps in the majority of cases. DomainKeys Identified Mail or DKIM record is added to DNS. This includes your unique signature for your domain. I won't show you that record here because it is unique for each domain and can be quite lengthy. DKIM detects if an email has changed in transit after you have sent it by the receiving server. This detects a man-in-the-middle attack where key information in an email is changed after being sent, such as bank account details, for example. Describing technically how this works is well outside the scope of this video. However, in essence, the email is fingerprinted as it leaves your email app, such as Outlook, and that fingerprint is attached to the email. When the receiving server checks the email, it looks at the fingerprint and performs a calculation based on the DKIM signature record in DNS. If the calculation passes, the email has not been tampered with. If it fails, the email has been tampered with and will be quarantined or rejected based on your DMARC policy, which we'll see in the next slide. Email tampering is a well-known method of covertly changing critical information, such as bank details, without the receiver being aware the changes were made. I recently changed my bank account information and I sent payroll an email with the information of my new bank account. Payroll called me to confirm 2 things. 1, I actually sent the email. 2, confirmation of the bank BSB and account numbers. This is a great practice because it not only confirms my email was not spoofed, but also that it was not tampered with in transit. So how can we control which emails get through after SPF and DKIM are checked? And how can we get a report on this? This is where DMARC comes into play. A domain-based message authentication reporting and conformance, or DMARC record, solves this problem. DMARC helps mail administrators prevent hackers and other attackers from spoofing their organization and domain. This should be implemented with an SPF and DKIM record. In other words, it adds an extra layer to supplement SPF and DKIM protections. DMARC also lets you request reports from email servers that get messages from your organization or domain. These reports have information to help you identify possible authentication issues and malicious activity for messages sent from your domain. Let's break down the sample DMARC record shown. The V is the version, in this case it is DMARC version 1. P is the policy, in this case it is set to reject, but it could be quarantine or none, so any email failing the SPF record check will be rejected outright. RUA is where the receiving server is to send a spam report to. In this case, spam@loyalit.com.au. DKIM is whether the report is generated when a DKIM record fails. This can be relaxed or strict. In this case, we have a strict DKIM conformance report. ASPF is whether the report is generated when an SPF record fails. This can be relaxed or strict. In this case, we have a strict DKIM conformance report. The absence of an ADKIM or ASPF record indicates a relaxed policy. Relaxed will generate less reports. Let's exit the propeller hat zone and wrap up the video. What did we learn? We learnt how email goes from the sender to the receiver, how hackers can spoof sending email addresses. We know hackers can change the contents of email in transit. SPF, DKIM and DMARC are technologies to detect and report on spoofing and tampering. Spam filters help reduce the spam email you receive in your inbox. Thank you for joining me for a look at stopping spam. It can be complex to set up initially, but once it's set up, you will have the best protections in place to make sure your email address can't be spoofed or emails tampered with in transit. Don't forget, you can contact me via email, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. Also, check out the podcast at loyalit.com.au/podcast. Until next time, stay safe online.
Oh yeah, this is the Cyber Informer. Hackers, you going down like, oh yeah, this is the Cyber Informer. Hackers, you going down, yeah.